Hey, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Kensington, Orion. We're so glad you're joining us this morning on the stream. We have an amazing day ahead, and we are in week 2 of our I Feel series. And I want to know what group you are connected into. I know you're joining us virtually, but we have options for you. So check it out on our groups page, kensingtonchurch.org/groups. We have Alpha, we have care groups, we have small groups for men and women and everything in between. So come and be a part of things, whether it's in person or online. You're not going to want to miss it. Also, today, our family ministry, our kids ministry, is doing a barbecue at Bear Creek Park, and it's from 1 to 2:30, and they would love to meet you. So come and check that out. You can register, or Ryan says you can just show up. But we have Steve Andrews with us today, and today we are diving into I Feel Anxious. So settle in, and we're glad you're here.
praise Jesus for everything he has done and who he is in our life. So you can have my yes. You can have my yes with no exception. I'm laying down my right to second guess. Hey, you can have my yes. I'm giving you my fear of never knowing whatever's coming next. I know you got me. You can have my yes. You're the lamp, you're the light, you're the cloud that guides me. You're the way, you're the truth, you're the life inside me. You conquered my fears, so I leave it all behind. I'll run into the light. And I'm giving you my dreams and my ambitions. Your presence is my prize and my provision. When you ask, oh, who could come against if you are for me? 'Cause even in the fire, I know you got me. I'm giving you my yes again. You're the lamp, you're the light, you're the cloud that guides me. You're the way, you're the truth, you're the life inside me. You conquered my fears, so I leave it all behind. I'll run into the light. Oh, wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Oh, wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Oh, wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. I'll follow you. Yeah. Oh, wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Oh, wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow. Oh, wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Oh, I'll follow you. Yeah. You're the lamp, you're the light, you're the cloud that guides me. You're the way, you're the truth, you're the life inside me. You conquered my fears, so I leave it all behind. I'll run into the light. Yeah. Oh, I'll run into the light. Yeah. Oh, I'll leave it all behind. Yeah, I'll run into the light.
I love it. What a way to start the morning. Let's give it up for them again. I wish I could start like every day like that, right? I love it. Well, you guys can have a seat because I have like 82 things to tell you today. Not really that many, but welcome is first and foremost. And my name is Kim, and I am part of the campus team here at Orion, and we are so glad you are with us today. First, we are leading with a celebration. Ladies, who was with us yesterday for Getaway? I see Debbie. Come on. Susan, thank you. There we go, more friends. We had an amazing women's event yesterday, downtown Detroit at the Durfee Innovation Society. We had almost 200 women come together and celebrate. It was all of Kensington was represented, all the different campuses, and it was just such a beautiful day. We really dove into what our unique design was, and Shauna, who is our new central teaching pastor for all of Kensington, was really the vision behind the day. We had so much fun just gathering as women, celebrating each other in all of our unique designs and how God has wired each of us. So ladies, if you have never participated with us before in one of our women's events, you are not going to want to miss the next one, right? Ladies that were there, come on, make it louder. Thank you. That's a little bit better. Some of us might not actually be awake yet because it was a busy weekend. But other things going around this great place, it is fall, and here at Kensington, that means it is time to connect. So what group are you in? Not are you in a group, but what group are you in? Are you a part of Alpha? Are you a part of Bible Basics? Are you in one of the women's ministry groups, small groups, men's groups, couples groups, married group, what did I miss? Family groups. There's so many ways to get connected around this place, possibly one of our care ministries, and we would love to help you do that. So once again, this weekend, we have opportunities in the lobby for you to stop at a table, have a conversation. Most of the signups are online, so you can go to kensingtonchurch.org/groups and check that out. But we would love to talk with you and help you get plugged in some way. You guys noticed you got a little something when you walked in today. You don't need to worry about that right now. You can kind of set that aside. Steve Andrews is with us today, and he is going to walk that through. Listen to that, Steve. You're getting a shout out already. Woo! Don't give him a bigger head than he already has. Come on. I love it. So much going on. Another thing we want to make you aware of, our K-Kids Family Barbecue happening today. So you can either jump online and register. If you don't have time to do that and you and your family want to go participate, show up at Bear Creek Park from 1 to 2:30. Free food, fun for all. Ryan says there's going to be an amazing kickball competition, and he can be pretty competitive, so you might want to prepare for that. But we would love for you to come and join us and be a part of that community as well. As we continue our day, we have an amazing crew that is going to join me on stage here, and I don't know if anybody knows about our Kaleo program, but it is an amazing group of young people, all ages, starting as young as kindergarten through 5th grade, who have passions for drama, music, and all of the arts. This crew that's coming up here now is part of the Songwriters Initiative. They wrote this and are going to perform it for you, and I would love to share a little bit more after they're done. So enjoy, you guys.
So tell me, what's going on?
Well, there's a lot going on.
Can only see what's in front of me. Can only see what's in front of me. Face to face, is this destiny? Why can I not see some things lingering? What is there for me? Why can I not see some things lingering? What is there for me? Finally turn to see what's next to me. No reflection, feel the mystery. Walking toward unknown territory. I don't know what to expect, that's what makes life worth living. Go to the beat, beyond, beyond. Go to the beat, beyond, beyond. Go to the beat, beyond, beyond. Gets me, I gotta be it, gotta leave it all to find me. Out of sight, new reality. Gravity. Why can I not see some things lingering? What is there for me? Why can I not see some things lingering? What is there for me? Finally turn to see what's next to me. No reflection, feel the mystery. Walking toward unknown territory. I don't know what to expect, that's what makes life worth living. Go to the beat, beyond, beyond. Go to the beat, beyond, beyond. Go to the beat, beyond, beyond. Gets the end, gotta begin, gotta leave it all to find it.
Aimless, blank pages, Abyss below me, I risk my only chance with no harness. Arms out, just embrace the bridge, the harmonies I miss. But soon as I try to catch my balance, I slip and fall into emptiness. Hold this abundant gift, blindfolded a broken mirror. I don't know what reflection is. Superstitious beyond the myths, I go beyond the limits you can find me with. Hold on, keep the beat on, I go beyond neon skies. Northern lights, I hope when you can rise. Gifts in me and art that I cannot define. Pause for the blessing in sight. And if you want to this beat, I better give you some hype. I live in the beat, I live in the beat.
Yeah, live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Live in the beat. Live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Live in the beat. Live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Live in the beat. Live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Yeah, live in the beat. Live in the beat. Live in the beat.
Oh my goodness! They wrote this. Can you believe that? Come on, keep cheering, keep cheering, keep cheering, keep cheering. That is amazing to be that talented. Seriously, guys, absolutely amazing, amazing work. But yes, we have a group called Kaleo. It starts in kindergarten through 5th grade for the original class, and it meets at different locations where your kids can be poured into and learn so much. But music, drama, dance, so many different things with the arts. And then for the older students, there's the Writers Collective. Arthur, who was rapping for us, was an intern a few years back, and he is a big portion of that group. Seriously, I think we should clap probably one more time, right? So we are going to continue with our day. As I mentioned, Steve is with us today, which is super fun. We are in week 2 of our I Feel series, really a series talking about emotions. And it's kind of heavy sometimes. And today we are talking about I feel anxious. So to just kind of say that word kind of makes shivers go down my spine. And it's overwhelming and it's heavy. Kind of to that place where you just don't know what to do. You kind of go inside yourself and you're a little bit frozen. That's kind of where we're headed today. So we have a video and a song that we would love for you to kind of take in as we continue with our day. We're so glad you're here.
So tell me, what's going on?
Well, there's a lot going on. My boyfriend has commitment issues. My dad's just been hospitalized. My mom is continually in my business. Work sucks. And my car just broke down. So.
There are many times in life when we have to deal with a lot of things. It's all about how we choose to react and deal with all that stress.
Turn off the TV, it's starting to freak me out. It's so loud, it's like my ears are bleeding. What am I feeling? Can't look at the ceiling. This light is so bright, it's like I'm overheating. It's mine, is it mine? Who am I to judge? Oh, I should be fine, but it's all too much. I get overwhelmed so easily. My anxiety makes inside of me, makes it hard to breathe. What's come over me feels like I'm somebody else. I get overwhelmed so easily. My anxiety keeps me silent. When I try to speak, what's come over me feels like I'm somebody else. I get overwhelmed. These faces who don't know what space is. Crowds are shut down, I'm overstimulated. Nobody gets it. Say I'm too sensitive. I can't listen cause I'm eyeing the exits. It's mine, is it mine? Who am I to judge? Oh, I should be fine, but it's all too much. I get overwhelmed so easily. My anxiety creeps inside me, makes it hard to breathe. What's come over me feels like I'm somebody else. I get overwhelmed so easily. My anxiety keeps me silent. When I try to speak, what's come over me feels like I'm somebody else. I get overwhelmed.
response. And you don't know when I feel it, man.
This mind isn't mine. Who am I to judge? Oh, I should be fine, but it's all too much. I get overwhelmed so easily. My anxiety creeps inside and makes it hard to breathe. What's come over me feels like I'm somebody else. I get overwhelmed so I get overwhelmed.
And how does that make you feel?
Amazing. Wow, great job. Okay, if you weren't anxious before that video, you are now. But I feel like that's almost a perfect description of the way our lives are shaking out in the 2021 year of life, where there's so much intensity. Do you guys feel that? Anybody? Okay, no, okay. Well, what are you guys living in La La Land? Y'all are doing great. My name is Steve Andrews, and I have been anxious every day of my life. I don't have a chip for it, but I have literally felt anxiety probably waking every day of my life. I don't know if that's true for other people. Yeah, okay. There's two of us. The rest of you can go home now. Those of you that are watching on the live stream. But it's amazing that I, from earliest moments of my life, remember these feelings of anxiousness and uncertainty. And then, of course, there are moments that came hammering in that just confirmed there was a lot to be anxious about. And it's interesting, it was so funny as I was preparing this week, I was supposed to be at Clarkston today. Cliff Johnson was supposed to be here. But Cliff, two of his daughters tested positive for COVID yesterday. So, which is a huge concern because of Angela's health after her second kidney transplant. And so all of a sudden I'm feeling anxious for them, you know, and worried about them as well. And actually I thought it'd be a great way just because one of the things I'm going to tell you today about anxiety is the only thing that's ever worked for me is just bringing it to Jesus. And so that's what I'm going to do to start this message. Lord, I'm just going to bring to you today the anxiety that's in this room, that's in people's hearts. I want to pray especially for Cliff and Angela, for Angela's health, for the worry that they're experiencing. And just would pray, Lord, that you'd wrap your protective arms, not only around Cliff and Angela and the girls today, but I would ask, Lord, for us, that you'd give us a way to see our lives and our anxiety in a new way today. And I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, cool. Well, one of the ways that I wanted us to see it in a new way today is you got a sheet when you walked in. Everybody just pointed at me, so I know you got it, and you got a pen with you. Okay, half of you aren't pointing it at me because why? Because you're already irritated by me? Okay. But yeah, that's not surprising. I would love for you to go ahead right now, anonymously. There'll be no way that anybody knows what you checked. We're gonna pass these to the inner aisles when you're done. But if any of these statements are true of you, I'd love for you to just put a check or an X, doesn't matter. I feel alone. That's the first one. No one would love me if they knew what I've done. I hate how I look. I know a lot of you are going to check that because when you see me, you know it's going to be really hard to ever look this good. So some of that is intimidating. I've used food to cope, either restrictively or excessively. I'm depressed. My identity is based upon the success or future of my children. I'm sure no one's ever done that. I feel like I don't have any friends. I regularly drink too much. I've had panic attacks. I worry for the well-being of my child or children. I have a child who has a mental health issue. I've intentionally hurt myself physically. I feel shame about something I cannot share. I've lost control of my anger or behavior. I worry about the well-being of my spouse. I am deep in debt financially and have anxiety and stress. Wow. I would say at least half of those I'm checking. But I'd like for you to check them now. If you're done checking, if you've gone through it, you don't have to spend a ton of time. Just pass it out to the aisles. I'm going to have the ushers collect them, and I'm going to do something anonymously with them at the end of the service. If you're willing to just send that down, would be great. Go ahead. If you marked it, send it out to the edges, and the ushers will get it. I have just thought a lot about this, and some of this, I thought sharing this almost was going to make people too anxious. Like I was going to increase anxiety today by talking about anxiety. And I find that I'm anxious over surprising things. Like, for example, I'm at a stage in my life and at Kensington where I know tons of people that are battling cancer. And I pray for them daily, and I'm in connection with so many people, and that connection, and people that are struggling with their children, people that are struggling with their employment, struggling with their future, right? And so I see this everywhere, but it's amazing how you respond differently to different things. Like this week, I got a scratch on my nose. Can anybody see it? I was going to have a modeling shoot later this week, and I've got to somehow get that fixed. But, you know, when I was 25, I got a scratch on my nose. I go, I can't remember where the scratch came from. But now I'm 65, I see the scratch on my nose, and I go, I wonder if this is cancer, right? Is this skin cancer on my nose? That was my first thought, because I don't remember cutting it. By the way, if you're young, if you're like under 25, I got great news for you. One of the really fun things about getting old is your skin gets paper thin. So enjoy the vision of the future. Just add that to your series of worries. But think about our lives. In fact, certain things are, in a sense, are new to anxiety. Constant news feeds. You get on your news feed, and most people I know have a logarithm right within their feed, and it feeds you things that create anxiety in you. Social media does this. People doing things on social media that they would never do in person. Bombarded with negative images and stories. And that really bugs me, because in being a part of this church for 30 years, I am bombarded with positive stories every day that are just incredible. But when you look outside, you don't get them. You don't see them. And then sometimes there's this mixed bag. Like I don't know if Craig shared it last week, but a lot of our Christian families, leaders who have been identified by the Taliban are getting out and have gotten out of Afghanistan, but some of the families have not and have been executed. So what do I do with that? How do I even begin to think about my anxiety related to people that I've loved from a distance for years, knowing that they're in utter, complete instability and anxiety? And I wonder if what I'm going to say today is true for them. Like, I almost thought about this message today for them more than for me, because the story of David we're looking at today is much more like their story. So, at the same time, I want to say this. We can sometimes be in places where there doesn't seem to be a care in the world. I went to the Rochester Adams football game Friday night. Anybody go? See a show of hands? Anybody was there? Okay, about 10 or 15 of us. It was amazing. Yeah, Rochester Adams people are clapping. We're clapping. Yeah, we won again. For what, like the 30th year in a row? I don't know. But the place was packed. You know, thousands of kids just hanging around the fence up on the hill. The Rochester stands was 100% full. The Adams side was 100% full. It was a blast and laughter and fun. The football day was great, wasn't it? I mean, it was just a wonderful night. And in a moment like that, you can be tricked into going, man, I don't have a care in the world. In fact, I have a confession to make. If someone wants to pray over me. I gambled my last $5 Friday night on the 50-50 raffle. And I had such a lucky feeling that I was going to win out of 5,000 people. And I almost won it. I only missed by all 6 numbers. But that whole evening was just a blast. It was laughter and fun and conversation, and people of all ages, a packed stadium. You just forget the pain and the struggle of the world. But I would just say, don't be tricked, because as soon as you stepped into real conversations, you see into people's lives. In fact, they announced that one of the dads of one of the boys died last week, and I didn't realize that the wife of that guy who just died was sitting literally 5 feet from me the whole game. Isn't that, tell me, isn't that life? You think you have this roller coaster of great and tough stuff. And so many of you, if you're like me, this last year and a half has left me unsure of how to navigate so much of the emotions of my life. And so I wanted to look again at David as we're looking at really parts of David's life. We looked at last week about feeling unseen. Remember, David didn't even get invited to the party. His dad thought so little of him, he didn't even bring him in from the field when they were looking for a new king. Today, I want to talk about David and his feelings of anxiety. And I want to lean into David's story and then connect that to the New Testament in the moments that we have. And I got to just say, I was thinking about the anxiety this week. My granddaughter, this week, we were at a park last Saturday, and we're walking along, and she's 8 years old, and she's like, Gimpy, that's my grandfather, and she's like, Gimpy, you know, I think I want to come and live with you and Gaga now. I'm like, well, like, wouldn't your parents and your brother and sister miss you? She goes, yeah, but your house is a lot more fun. She's 8 years old. I'm thinking, wow. Yeah, I'm thinking of my daughter and my son-in-law, fasten your seatbelt, this is going to be a wild ride. But everybody's she's thinking, this would be less stressful at Gaga and Gimpy's house. So this was, in a sense, so good to look at the life of David, because David's life was always filled with anxiety. If you look back at the story of David, remember before he goes and fights Goliath, he says, I fought the lion and the bear as I'm watching the sheep alone, and he's taking on lions and bears. I mean, the guy was had to be an amazing human being in terms of physical force and skill and quickness and courage. And then he takes on Goliath. And then at some point, we're still not sure chronologically, that he was also a harpist. He was an artist. He was very like Dave Wilson, plays the guitar, throws touchdowns, kills bears and lions. Oh wait, that's someone else. And then you'd think he would have the world by the tail, but after he takes Goliath and he liberates his country, it says when the men were returning home after David had killed Goliath, the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs and with timbrels and lyres. And as they danced, they sang, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Well, as soon as you hear that, you go, this is not going to go well. This is not going to be good. Saul was angry, very angry. So, in fact, the Hebrew there describes an incredible intensity of, he was, just enraged. And this refrain displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. So literally, from almost the beginning, Saul is mistrusting David and is not appreciating David, and all of a sudden turns from rage into jealousy into murderous thoughts. So let me just take you through a sequence of what David experienced. 1 Samuel 18, 28 to 29. Let's start there. It says, when Saul realized that the Lord was with David and that his daughter Michal loved David, Michal was given to David in marriage for defeating Goliath. Saul became still more afraid of him, and he remained his enemies the rest of his days. This is his son-in-law now. And then later, Psalm 19:1, Saul tells his oldest son Jonathan, who was David's best friend, and all the attendants to kill David. So how do you think your anxiety would be in this situation if you were David? 1 Samuel 19, 9 and 10. But an evil spirit from the Lord came on Saul as he was sitting in his house with his spear in his hand while David was playing the lyre. And Saul tried to pin him to the wall with his spear. But David eluded him as Saul drove the spear into the wall. And that night, David made good his escape. Very next day, he says, Saul sent men to David's house to watch it and kill him in the morning, but he was gone. He had hidden away. And then this last verse that describes David's life says, David stayed in the wilderness strongholds and in the hills of the desert of Ziph. By the way, in April, Justin Warrens and I are going to lead a Man Up walking trip in Israel. It's going to really be cool. We did it 2 years ago. We canceled last year. Actually, it's been, maybe it's been more than 2 years. But anyway, we're excited. If you're a man, you're interested in walking in the footsteps of Jesus. It's not incredibly strenuous. There is a lot of walking. You can always jump on the bus, but I will take you to the desert of Ziph, where David was hiding, where day after day Saul searched for him. I mean, we walked up into these unbelievable hills around En-Gedi and west of En-Gedi. But it says God did not give David into his hands. And while David was at Horesh in the desert of Ziph, he learned that Saul had come out to take his life. The point is, Saul was relentless and outrageous in his pursuit of David. David was on the run for years, living in the wilderness. And some of the time, he was completely alone. And some of the time, he had a small band of people that were committed to him and followed with him. But even in those moments, you go back and read the story, there's a moment where he has a band of 600 men and they go out to battle and they come back and they find that all their children and all their wives and all their possessions have been abducted and gone. They literally come back to their place where they were living in the wilderness and everything is gone. I mean, you can't even describe the horror and the anxiety that he lived his life with. And I think it's impossible for me, at least, to imagine the level of David's anxiety, where he lost his family, his friends, his home, his security, his status. And he did it simply for trusting God and living a life of faith as a young man. Because David, as a young man, was really a person of faith. Later in life, he starts to wander from his faith. But in those days, he was really trying to trust God. And look at when he's in the wilderness, he writes Psalm 142. I want to just read the first 3 verses to you. This is when he's hiding in the wilderness. He says, I cry out to the Lord. I plead for the Lord's mercy. You ever done that? Just cry out to the Lord. Lord, there were periods when my kids were wandering, where Paul and I were up every night, and just there's those moments when you're so anxious, and what do? There's nothing you can do. Except it's like, oh God, oh man, Jesus. That's what David's doing in all the Psalms. In fact, it's really interesting. When my dad died 16 years ago, for 2 years, all I could read was the Psalms. I couldn't even read the rest of the Bible for 2 years, unless I was teaching a message on something. But I would read the Psalms because the Psalms are about the true nature of our hearts and what we're feeling and how we're trying to engage and connect with God. He says, I plead, Lord, I'm pleading for your mercy. Can you hear him in the wilderness? I pour out my complaints before him. Now he's talking to us. And I tell him all my troubles. And when I'm overwhelmed, he's back now, he's talking to God again. You alone know the way I should turn. I cannot tell you how many times in the middle of the night, in the last 20 years, right, in the middle of the night, I just said, Lord, I don't know what to do. Anybody here ever said that? I don't know where to turn. All my bag of tricks are empty. And so you cry out to the Lord. There are so many books, of how to deal with anxiety and stuff. I just want to tell you, it begins for me, in terms of the only thing that's worked for me, is I begin by just saying, Lord, help. Like, help. Lord, help. Lord, do what only you can do. Now, I haven't really felt this last part, but David did. He said, wherever I go, my enemies have set traps for me. Now, I just will be honest with you, I've never felt that in my life. I feel so blessed with incredibly loving, caring, gracious people, far, far beyond anything I ever deserved. But David knew that, even that extended aspect of this pain. And you can sense his desperation and how overwhelmed he felt. Here's what I want you to understand. Most of us who've lived with anxiety can probably go back to our childhood and remember there were moments when we started the practice of anxiety. Like I remember when it really began for me. It began in two places. One when I was 5 years old, and I was just learning how to read. It was the only thing I was ever did early in my life. And everything else I'm real slow on, but I started to read early, and I remember reading a Life magazine about a tsunami that had gone through Bangladesh and killed 100,000 people. It was real. And I'm 5 years old. I mean, what do you do when you're 5 years old with that information? The same thing I do with information now. I just go, Lord, I don't know. I didn't know what to do with it. But I remember I felt like, wow, this is the world I'm living in. The next moment that I remember just as vividly as if it happened 3 seconds ago, some of you heard me tell the story, but I tried to protect Richard Lowe, who was the class clown of our Snowden Elementary. And Bruce Barber was the school bully, and he was punching Richard in the face at recess. And I was a year younger than Bruce, even though I was probably twice his size. But everybody knew, don't mess with Bruce. And I pulled Bruce off, and he turned and looked at me like, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. And then, in proof that there was a God, the recess bell rang for us to go back to class. Oh my gosh. Well, what I didn't know is walking home that afternoon, I just looked it up. My walk to school was 4/10 of a mile. I used to tell my kids it was like a mile and a half. And I'm walking home from school, and there were the hedges right on Idlewild, which is halfway home. And Bruce Barber with 6 of his buddies come out from behind the hedge. I'm walking home alone. And he surrounds me. He says, so he's like, so you wanted me today, you know? And I'm like, well, not really, you know? And he says, well, we're going to fight right now. And his 6 buddies surrounded us in a circle. And I'd never been in a fight before. So I went in to wrestle him, and he twisted me on that and hit me in the face twice. He cut my nose right where it's cut. That's still a cut from when Bruce hit me 55 years ago. And then he cut my eye, and he left me there just kind of stunned, and then he and his buddies walked off. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was, if this is McLean Boulevard, walking down to Snowden is down where the screen is, and this screen is where my home was. The middle street was Idlewild, and right here, the second street over was where Bruce lived, and I lived on Overton Park. And so I would literally come to the corner for the next 2 years. Every morning I'd come to this corner. We had a pillar on our street there. It was kind of a decorative pillar. And I would literally come out and look to see if Bruce had come out. And if he had come out and was walking with his friends, I'd wait 5 minutes till they had gone on to school. Because I was terrified of running into him alone. And I never told one person about the terror that was in me. I'd literally come and I'd look and see him, and I'd look and didn't see him coming out, and then I just walked to school real fast. About 2 years later, he got kicked out of school for pulling a knife on Principal Farino. And I never saw him again. Don't know anything about him. But my point was, for the next 2 years, wasn't the beating. It was the terror of just walking home to and from school every day. Pit in my stomach every morning, eating breakfast. How you doing? How's your day going to be, honey? Oh, I'm doing good, Mom. You know, and the whole time I got this pit in my stomach because of Bruce Barber. You know what? My story's not unique. Everybody's got a pit in their stomach about something. And so what is it that can help in the midst of dealing with these emotions? And I have 3 questions for you that you can take a screenshot of this if you want. You want to think about this. But these are 3 questions that have helped me over the course of my life in a big way and have led me to Jesus. Number 1, are my circumstances creating anxiety? And it sounds like a dumb question. Like, are my circumstances creating anxiety? Hello? Heck yeah! The circumstances of life are real. I'm worried about every single one of my children. I'm worried about my wife. I'm worried about my grandchildren. I'm worried about you. I'm worried about my friend's health. I'm worried about whether my knees are gonna last for another year. I mean, it's like the list for every one of us is endless. And I just want to say, the circumstances create anxiety because life is hard. Life is hard. And I want to read you a verse. Before I do, I want to just read what comes before. Jesus is getting ready to go to the cross. He's talking to his disciples. And he says, do you now believe? In other words, do you believe in me? Jesus replied. He says, the time is coming, and in fact has come, when you will be scattered, each to your own home. And you will leave me all alone. And this is the part that I want you to see on the screen, and I want you to take a screenshot, because this is what I want you to remember today. But Jesus says, yet I am not alone, for my Father is with me. You see, the thing that I love about Jesus is Jesus steps into our anxiety. When Jesus is in the garden, he's crying out to the Father, I don't want to do this. I am so overwhelmed with anxiety, I don't know what to do. So if you've ever felt anxiety, the thing that I have experienced in my circumstances creating anxiety is being reminded of this. Jesus is with me. I am not alone. I'm not alone. I want to be super honest with you today. In your life and in mine, there's going to come a point where you lose everyone. Listen, I'm not being morbid. I'm just telling you this is how it works. Unless Jesus returns while we're living. That's why Johnny Cash sing the 9 Inch Nail song. Everyone who loves me leaves in the end, right? Here's the point. That's in part it's not true because Jesus has promised us an eternity. It's not goodbye. It's just see you in a while. But there's this point where can I trust God with my present and my future? And can I hear him say, Steve, you're not alone. Because he's telling his disciples, listen, if you follow me, you're all going to be scattered. It's not, you know, people always talk about the great victory of following Christ. There's part of that, but there's part of that when you look at the life of the disciples, man, their lives were so hard. And they didn't end well physically. They were rejected and hurt, but they had Jesus with them. If you have Jesus, I wanted to say, then you have everything. Doesn't mean the anxiety is going away because sometimes our circumstances are just going to overwhelm us. When Jesus, I just think he says, take heart. This word in the Greek is really interesting. It literally means grab onto courage. And I think what he was saying is grab onto me, grab onto my courage. Because we know, if those of us who've read the New Testament, that Jesus faced terrible punishment and ridicule. And yet Hebrews says he despised the shame of the cross and the rejection of people. And he did all for the purpose of bringing us his forgiveness and peace, his shalom. And so I just think something that's really helped me in doing it with people and with friends, we talk about small groups, is just being in relationship with people where I can go, hey, I want you to know, I'm feeling really anxious. I love being in a relationship with Paula for all these years where I can just say, honey, I'm just really anxious today. I can tell her that. And I don't necessarily get a sermon, but just like, man, okay, let's talk about it. Let's, and so if you can speak it out loud, sometimes the demons don't appear as big or as powerful, as overwhelming, but to acknowledge it to the Lord. And I think some of us came from religious backgrounds where we're like, man, just talk about how great it is. Like, Lord, no, tell the Lord exactly what it is you're feeling. And if it's anxiety, let him have it. If it's joy, let him enjoy it. Okay, or my circumstances. Here's another huge question for me, are my thoughts creating anxiety? Are my thoughts? The average speaker, anybody know how many words the average speaker can speak in a minute? About 300 words a minute. Do you know how many words your brain does a minute on average? Just in the privacy of your brain? 2,500 to 3,000 words a minute. This is why, if any of you have ever said, man, I could write a book if I could just collect my thoughts. The problem is your brain's going, and then you go, and then all the thoughts are gone. I tried it. Because whatever you speak out or write, your mind's already run past it. And so we know that so much of our self-talk can be negative. When I asked you to fill this out, I've talked about this with Paula and her interactions with women through the years of how many women have just a negative body image and not understanding Psalm 139 where Jesus says, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. You're beautiful. You're amazing. You are my creation. But we have the self-talk that impacts our emotional anxiety. And sometimes we're not even aware of the things we're saying to ourselves. But it's so important with Jesus and with people, you just start saying, just like, hey, how do we build in encouraging self-talk? Because when you don't, the anxiety starts to take over. I love what Romans 12 says, part of that. He says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Because the world, man, we've never lived in a more fear-based time where everything, I even hesitate to tell you, I was listening to a news feed on the radio, and they were talking about people 25 and under, that 50% of them in a poll believe that the world globally in terms of climate is too far gone. Doesn't matter what we do, it can't come back. 50%. Like giving up. Like to just give into that. I'm like, are you kidding me? Go ahead and solve the problem. Let's figure it out. People are doing great things. I just read about this incredible thing that Iceland's doing with CO2, creating these machines that pull CO2 out of the air. There are so many things to be positive and hopeful. And if you're surrounded in your news feed or in relationships with things that are just bearing you down, man, I would say look for hopeful relationships. I did a trip this summer with 7 guys to Africa. And it's just hard to describe what it was like to be with 7 guys for 11 or 12 days and just have fun and laugh and love each other and encourage each other, tell funny stories, build each other up, let each other know we loved each other. Man, you could feed on that for months. This is why we were never meant to live in isolation. And then, of course, the verse, there's several more verses. I'm just sharing you stuff that's been hugely important to me in my life. This next one is Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy, think about such things. Now, I want to put a twist to that to you. For a lot of you who've maybe know this verse, he's just saying, put your mind on really good things. Think about these things that are noble, right, lovely, and pure. Sometimes it's hard to find those things. You know what I think he was saying? I think it was part of the twist was saying, think about Jesus. Think about how lovely and pure and noble and excellent and praiseworthy Jesus, like fix your eyes on Jesus. There's so much in the New Testament of like, yeah, you're struggling, you're anxious. I want to say to you, it's okay to be anxious. I've learned in my life, it's okay because I can still in my anxiety go, Lord, I'm so worried. I got the yips. But I'm going to trust you because what else am I going to do? And I'm going to think about you and I'm going to think about the beautiful things that you do. I'm going to look at the people I love and I'm going to see their strengths and their flaws and I'm going to praise you for all of that. And when you do that, when you think about these things, it doesn't mean that the old negative thoughts are going to disappear because they're always going to keep coming back. At least that's my experience. But when you keep saying the thoughts that are good, the things that bring you to Jesus, there's something about it puts those other things in a less powerful perspective. And then here's the one that's been the most meaningful for me. This is the third question that I would encourage you to put on your refrigerator or somewhere. I'm not saying it's the most important thing I've ever said to you, but it's maybe the most important question that you can start each day with, and that is, am I living as God's beloved child? Man, what a question. I traveled the world as a kid with my mom and dad. My dad, remember my parents, we left home to take over a mission hospital in Kenya. We were in many situations where we could have lost our lives. Like we got caught in a crowd at the Nairobi fairgrounds where came within about maybe 2 minutes of being crushed to death by the 20,000 people that were pushing us into this gate, and the gate was locked and closed. And my dad had literally lifted me up in the air with my sister. I was 12, she was 13. He actually had lifted us, leaning us against the fence because the crush was squeezing the breath. We were at the point where we couldn't even breathe. I'll never forget my dad holding us up. But it was funny, I didn't feel afraid because I was with my dad. I should have been afraid, but it was something I'm like, man, I am living as his beloved child. He's going to hold me up. You know, that's the last thing he does. He's going to hold me up above the crowd. And that doesn't even count all the times we were in danger from animals and from poisonous snakes and mountains and rough terrain in the world. But I think that this is the one that is the trump card. That I wake up every day and go, yeah, I'm going to live as God's beloved child. I know I'm loved. This is the one question you have to settle if you're going to face anxiety in this world. You are God's beloved son, God's beloved daughter. And to prove that, I want to just do an exercise as we finish the day. Ushers, I'd love the ushers to come back. All the cards have been mixed up. There's no way that any way in the world that anyone could know what another card is, but I'm going to have them pass them out, and you just take the cards in the baskets, take one, and then pass them down the row. I want to do something with them. And as we're doing that, I want to share with you 2 verses that we've lived by here. This first verse is one that I've probably heard Dave Wilson speak on more than maybe any other verse that he ever spoke on in all the years of Kensington. 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. And I remember the first time he taught on this 30 years ago, he brought a fishing rod and he wrote concerns, all the anxieties of his life, and he wrote them on a sheet of paper, and then he hooked them onto the hook and he just cast it out. Fortunately, he didn't hook anybody or put anybody's eye out. And he said, you can't cast all your cares on him. He says, but what happens when we cast? What do we know we're going to do? We always tend to reel our anxiety where? What do? We reel it back in. And so he keeps saying, keep casting. Jesus is saying, keep bringing your anxiety to me because I care for you. And there's another verse that we've talked about so many times that has been so meaningful to me. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. In other words, don't just live in the anxiety, but keep bringing it, keep presenting it to God. Keep bringing, and say, here I am, Lord. Here I am again. Lord, here I am again for the millionth time. And here's what I want you to know that I've experienced all these years at Kensington. I have seen person after person in this community experience the peace of God that surpasses understanding. Okay? Bruce and Deb Potts are right here. Wait, raise your hands. You didn't know your sermon illustration today. Bruce, been a couple of years now, almost 2 years, going in, brain tumor. I saw you guys in the midst of terrible anxiety experience God's peace. And you actually have written a book about it. It's going to be part of your story. Hopefully we'll distribute your book sometime. Be really cool. But it's like, I know it's at least true for 2 people. 2 people have experienced it, and they're imperfect. Believe me, extremely imperfect people. But it's the peace of Christ that comes in and touches your life. I've seen it hundreds of times. I experienced it in my life this year. I had people in my family, there were moments I didn't know if there were members of my family who were going to live or die. And the peace of Christ, like, protected my heart. There were moments. There are other moments when I haven't been so sure, but I know it's real. And I want to finish this day by for us acknowledging together that anxiety is real, but that we can turn it over to the Lord. So how many of you have a card? Raise your card if you got it. Did you get a card back? Okay, so you have a card that's not yours. Nobody knows whose it is. It could be one of hundreds of people in this room. Here's what I want to do. I want to just read through these as we finish up. And as I read them, if your card is marked with that box, I want you to stand for the person that marked your sheet, okay? Just to get a feeling of what people in this room, and again, it's a live stream. I wish you guys could do it too, but I'm sure what's going to happen here will be similar for you. Okay, let's do it then. And I already told you I would stand on probably half of these. Let's begin with the first one. I feel alone. If your box is marked, okay, look around you. Okay, probably a third, probably 25% of the room. Go ahead, sit down. No one would love me if they knew what I've done. Is your box marked? Stand that up. Okay? There are people in this room that are feeling a terrible, terrible pain. I want to tell you something. We would love you. We would. Jesus loves you. Jesus didn't come because you were perfect. He came because he knew we were broken. Okay, next one. I hate how I look. Okay? This is real. This is people that you and I love. Okay? Next one. I've used food to cope, either restrictively or excessively. I'm standing up as I read this. Okay? Okay? A lot of us. All right? Thank you. I'm depressed. Okay? Just look around you. How about this next one? My identity is based upon the success or future of my children. Stand up. Okay, a lot of liars in this room on this one. I don't believe that. I mean, listen, I'm with you. I know how much we tie our identity into how well our kids are doing. So good. Anyway, it's okay. I forgive you for lying. That was just, anyway, maybe it's just because I was so terrible at that one. I feel like I don't have any friends. I'm curious about this one, okay? You know, there's a scripture in Proverbs that says there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. That was one of the verses that brought me to Jesus when I was a teenager. I regularly drink too much. That's a hard one to mark, sometimes harder to recognize, okay? Thank you. I've had panic attacks. How about that one? Okay. I worry for the well-being of my children. Huh. Okay, now that's where we got it. Yeah, we got to the truth on that. I have a child who has a mental health issue. I'm standing. I've intentionally hurt myself physically. How about that one? Is anybody able to even mark that one? Good. Just praying for those I just want to tell you, if you've felt that way or even thought about it, Jesus would wrap his arms around your body and your heart in a way of protection, that he would value it like something infinitely precious. I got to tell you, I got six of the squirreliest grandkids. I mean, I am so cool. How did I get 6 squirrely grandkids? They are so uniquely squirrely. And I mean, when I hold them, they love being tickled. And the delight I feel, the way I felt it with my kids. You know what? It's the delight every time I have breakfast or a meal or a dinner with you, Kensington people. And I sit and share a meal, and it's just like, I delight. I know you're imperfect. I delight in being with you. Ben Shad over here. If you ever want, the guy's the best laugh in the world. Maybe the best laugh I've ever heard. It's like, we had breakfast a few months ago. I'm like, dude, just to hear your laugh is like life. It's amazing. I feel shame about something I cannot share. Can you stand on that one? Man, I just would love for you to find trustworthy people that you could confess that to. I'm telling you, when you confess to Jesus and knowing that you're loved, and then you find people that will love you in that confession, it literally would begin to set you free to a new way of living. I've lost control of my anger or behavior. Okay. Yeah. I worry about the well-being of my spouse. How about that one? Sure, of course we do. Last one, I'm deep in debt financially and I have anxiety and stress over that. Okay, good. Not too many of you on that, I'm glad to hear it. But it's interesting. You can sit down. In a national poll taken, poverty was number 3 concern facing people in America. So a huge number of people that are terrified of living on the margins or not having enough. We live in a little more affluent community and have less of that as a concern. One person wrote in on their sheet, "I feel like killing myself." Susan just handed that to me. I want to say to that person, Jesus died for you. He went through all the pain you're experiencing. There's nothing you're going through that he hasn't felt that same despair. He said, "My soul in the Garden of Gethsemane is to the point of death." That's what he said. And I just want to say Jesus will be with you wherever you would go. And this last song that the band is here, I'm glad the band's been out just to hear and feel some of this that we're expressing right now. I want you to know something. When you're anxious, I want you to think, hey, Steve Andrews is anxious all the time. Steve Andrews is worried all the time. I promise you, everybody I know is worried all the time. There's no shame in that. And to say, I want to live in a community of people that are learning to express their anxiety to the Lord Jesus. I mean, because I don't want to carry it alone. I don't want to communicate to my children and grandchildren that life, right? I think we hide away from the pain of this world is real, but Jesus said, I'll never leave you, never forsake you. So there's really 2 choices today. These thoughts and emotions we've talked about can control us and rob us of our ability to live our lives, to live with joy. But here's what I've learned, and I'm still learning. These same thoughts and emotions, all of this anxiety, through all the hardships of life, which, by the way, for me is very little compared to other people, but still, my hardships are my hardships, right? They're real to me. They're real to you. The loss, the complexities, the pain of life, the feelings that create anxiousness. Acknowledge them like David did, like Peter did, like Paul did, like Jesus did, and embrace it. And I found as you embrace the anxiety, let it move you to cry out to Jesus. And then let every part of it keep bringing you back to him. This final song is based on a hymn that, the first part of this song is an old hymn that we used to sing in church. And by the way, I've lived the last 30 years in total thankfulness for this music today has been unbelievable. It's so people using their gifts for the Lord. I love that. Because my church growing up was the worst music in the history of the universe of church. But we sang this song, and I remember singing the first part of the song that you're going to hear. I can remember standing the sandwich as a 5-year-old 60 years ago between my mother and father, which is the youngest of my family, 5 kids. It was an incredible feeling of security to stand in church and sing and have them stand on each side of me. And of course, my mother, little tiny woman now, she was gigantic to me then, but singing the fact that Jesus has control of our lives. And I always loved looking up at my dad and seeing the tears stream down his face. Every Sunday we'd sing, the tears would stream down his face because he knew that Jesus had us. He has you. He has you. So as we sing this together, feel his arms wrapping around you.
Church, won't you join me in turning your cares and your fears and handing those over to Christ this morning as we sing this song. His perfect love casts out fear. So join me as we proclaim this truth together. We sing, my hope is built. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I my hope is built. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. Christ alone. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of when darkness seems to hide His face, I rest on His unchanging grace. In every high and stormy day, my anchor holds within. My anchor holds within the veil. He is Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. He is Lord of Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. Come on, every voice lift it up with me. Christ alone, cornerstone. Come on, church. Weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of shall come with trumpet sound. Oh, may I then in Him be found, dressed in His righteousness alone, faultless stand before the throne. Can we just sing through that chorus one more time, church? Christ, Christ alone, cornerstone. Every voice, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord of all.
Wow, it's beautiful. It takes me back a long way. Still true. One phrase in that song I want you to think about. God's promise through Jesus Christ is that we will stand before the throne faultless. Think about that. faultless. Are you kidding me? All the mistakes, all the screw-ups of your life. Jesus says, I don't see that. Who said to the woman, remember, caught in adultery, where did all your judges go? Who's condemning you? She said, they're all gone, Lord. No one. There's no one left. He says, neither do I condemn you. As we were singing, I was just thinking of Jesus' words in John 14, don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house have many rooms. If it weren't so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I'll come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am. It's like Jesus saying, he's saying, don't be troubled. I read this at every funeral I've ever done, hundreds and hundreds of Kensington funerals. Someday some of you will read this at my funeral. Don't let your heart be troubled. Why did Jesus say that? Because he knew it would be troubled. He knew it would be all the time. And he says, believe in God and believe in me. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. This is the promise that Jesus goes with us in the midst of this. Anyway, this is not the end word on anxiety, but I'm just telling you what it's meant to me to know Jesus is with me in this journey in my lifetime. So it hasn't crippled me, but in a sense, it's empowered me to take risks and to trust, because he's with me every step. He's with you. He embraces you. He wraps you in his righteousness and his beauty. It's pretty awesome, isn't it? Well, isn't it? Yeah, it is. So 2 things. Some of you, as you think about the sheets that you marked, and just keep the one that was given to you, and just use it to pray for another person this week. Wouldn't that be cool? Because that's another thing that's helped me with my anxiety, is praying for others in their pain, stepping into that. So keep that and do that. Secondly, if you're harboring something and it's weighing you down, you've never shared it, start praying. We have Stephen ministers at Kensington that are incredibly trained people to hear people's pain and people's story. You could do that. There are people in the lobby that are ready to pray with you right after the service ends. And there are people on our staff that are trustworthy that you could share. It would be amazing. I'd love for you to do that. The second thing is live in community. That's why I'm holding out the barbecue today. I'm holding out the kids' barbecue at Bear Creek Nature Park today, which is real close by. Just go and have a blast with families. Living in joy and community drives so much of the fear of our lives away. It really does. When people know us and we know we're loved, it makes a huge difference. So Lord, move in my brothers and sisters here and those on stream. Know they're loved, they're valued, that you'll never leave us, you'll never let us go, that even right now, you're preparing a place for eternity for us, that we can live right now in the joy of confidence that every day and every breath matters because you're with us. We thank you in Jesus' name. Come back next week for I Feel Conflicted on the story of David. Love being with you. See ya.
Bye.